better be, right? Isn't this the nice place? You have tea and samosas and pakoras, and I know there are a few coming in, so it'll be sort of the full house.
Spicy one?
It's spicy one, spicy and non-spicy. But thank you again. I'm Nazira. I'm Nazira. I'm sort of hosting this chai and just chat session. This is our fourth one, actually. We've done 3 previously, focusing on health and other important issues that the community has. This one is particularly important because I've heard many parents talking about either they're parents of the teenagers or their kids are going to turn teenagers. And they're sometimes sort of freaking out to say, what should we do? We've heard these horror stories, or sometimes we've heard these good stories. We don't know how our kid is going to turn out. So what better not than have our panelists who are experts in their own respective fields to come and answer our questions. I'm not going to take a lot of time introducing them. Very briefly, I'm going to name them and their affiliation, but you can see their bios going back and forth, and you're welcome to get their phone numbers or emails. Is that okay, y'all? Okay, according to their respective fields. Quick housekeeping, please feel free to take chai and refreshments anytime you want. No restrictions, you can walk and get it and come back and sit and eat or drink. The restrooms are when you go out to your right. So the restrooms are there. And we have the panel discussion till around 5:30. And then we move to the debate, which is also going to be interesting. And there are going to be straight shooting questions in the debate. And I will call out sometimes your names, and I'm just kidding. But I know most of your names, so I'm gonna see how much you're listening or focused in our discussion. And so after the debate, we'll have an opportunity to ask Q&A to the panelists and the debaters. And once the panelists are done, they can sit in the front row. And once they see how the debate goes on, you can ask the debaters some questions of why they answered this way or that way. So from my right to left, we have newly turned sergeant, 2 years fresh, Aurelius Rivera from Norcross Police Department. So thank you so much for coming here. We have Dr. Venkat Kandala from Clayton County. He is the teacher, high school teacher from Elite Scholars Academy. So thank you for being here. We have Kate Boscia, and you're going to be really awed with the way she's going to express herself, because sometimes when it gets personal, it becomes personal, right? So you become very passionate for your own reasons. So thank you, Kate, for being here. One of my favorite person, I'm meeting him for the first time, Gurangad Singh is here, and my good friend Shalu's son, and he is going to speak on behalf or as a teenager with several questions that we have. So thank you, Gurangad, for being here. Andy, this is no new place to you. This is your office building. So thank you for home. So thank you for allowing us to be here and having this meeting. You do call yourself a salesperson champion, a sales champion. So I'm going to ask you tough questions. So I'm just kidding. So thank you. Thank you, Andy, for being here. Dr. Tofia, your expertise, of course, in research and adult and youth and teenagers' developmental stages and some of the challenges and how we address them. So your research expertise really helps. Shreya Sharma, thank you so much for being here from the Gwinnett Leadership Team. You are a member from the Gwinnett Leadership Team, and you do go to school. Which high school?
I go to Grayson High School.
Grayson High School, I thought so. So thank you so much for being here. And Marty, a special thank you to you, because we did have a couple of panelists sort of not cancel, but they couldn't really because they had an unavoidable emergency. So thank you for taking their place. But thank you for, in a short notice, for being here. And Marty wears several hats, especially on the mental health issues from suicide prevention, which we know is one of the challenges for teenagers from the state leadership level to you've also taken up the local leadership level on leading the mental health task force, being the chair. And after our panel discussion, of course, we do have some debate people who we'll bring in, and we'll ask the questions. So thank you again, all of you, for being here. Feel free to get some water. and tea. My first question to all the panelists, right, is, Marty, let's start with you. If there was a certain trait that you would like the people to have, what personality trait would that be? You can talk from your affiliation with your profession, or you can talk as a mom or as a sister, as a brother, as a friend about what's that personality trait that you would want the world, the friends, all of us to have.
That's a very good question, and the best answer I could give you is just to be a presence for people who are hurting. You know, I work in the counseling center of a church, and we always say the ministry of presence, because we always try to fix problems, and some problems just require people listening and being there for someone that's hurting. So people aren't as fragile as we think they are. And people are capable of solving their own problems just with support.
Thank you, Marty. Shreya?
I don't know if I could add on to what she said. I think that's very important. I think listening to a lot of problems that my friends have been going through throughout the years, there's no saying that just because you're a friend, you can fix their problems, or just because you're their relative, you can always solve what they're going through. But just being there, being an ear for them is definitely really important. So I think that was a good point that she made.
Awesome, thank you.
I guess for me, it would be about being honest, okay? Come from a place of integrity. Oftentimes, and hopefully I get to talk about this, we wear masks, okay? And so being open and honest and knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable, because in doing that, what's gonna happen is that you have an opportunity to grow.
Thank you, that was a good one, thank you.
I would add curiosity to it. You know, helping someone, I think being present is a great way to put it. But I also add that by asking great questions. You know, sometimes just asking the right question is advancing someone along in their thinking or supporting them in many ways. So just being curious and it shows that you're involved, shows that you care, but it also helps them to feel as though you're supporting them in their thought process as they're working through something.
Awesome, thank you. Dehab.
I would also say the same thing as the first two said about being more open and listening more, because that could help.
Thank you, Branga.
Yeah, I would agree. I think empathy, the word empathy is something we all have to understand what that means. It doesn't mean we're going to become you, but we can empathize with how you feel or where you're at in the moment. And so that would be, to me, empathetic, the most important character.
Very nice.
Good afternoon, guys. I don't want to say much about this. I would like to see every parent like to be a role model, because he or she is the one guiding the teenagers to grow up in their own way, like, you know. So I would like to see every parent as a role model. That's my perspective, like.
Are you saying this because you're a teacher?
Yeah,
Just
obviously,
kidding.
like, because I've been seeing different kind of students from the high school. When they get out of the high school, it's kind of it's a different kind of environment, you know. So before that, you need to encourage the kids. But I personally feel like, you know, the parents have to take care of the children until they graduate. Once they graduate, like, you know, they will take care of you. You don't need to worry about it.
Kind of along the same kind of lines what he was saying, I think that there has to be a distinction between parent and friend. So you want to be the parent, but you're not their friend. And so I think tough love sometimes goes a long way.
Very nice, thank you. So you also know that we have some quizzes. If you attended last time, some of you got gifts because you answered the right one. So the first quiz here is, which building has the most stories, or what building has the most stories? Shalu, I'm not kidding. Shalu always wins. She knows all the teenagers' quiz answers.
Which is the tallest building? Or
Which one has the most stories? Anywhere. Here, local. Okay, go ahead, Chandra.
Empire State.
Shalu's kid. Library, yay! Did you get? So he's gonna get a gift. Anjali, thank you. He goes to the library. So see, that shows we've not been to the library for some time. So thank you. I forgot your name. Anu. And Anu is Gurangat's brother. So thank you so much for being here. So Dr. Tofia, the next question is the relationship between an adult and teenager is very important. It's also very sort of sensitive with complexities in it. The question to you is the teenagers respond with just one-word answers, right? So how can we improve or allow them to thrive and strive in these communications with adults, can be parents, or can be teachers or principals or their coaches, anyone, but also lead their skepticism and idealism to good use?
I guess I can use some of the kids I've been working with as examples. When I do my therapy, I go into the communities, okay? And most of my clients are the adolescents or the children. One thing I realize, and I do have that particular situation where you're not getting a whole lot of conversation coming from the children. One of the things that I do is I do an Enneagram typology, which is the oldest typology out there. And it basically states that there are 9 basic personality types, okay? Now, when I go in, I do an assessment. And it's easy for me to assess that kid because kids are, a little bit, they're clearer to kind of depict in terms of what's going on. And in determining that personality type, I began to talk to those characteristic flaws, okay? And in doing that, it's kind of like the kid comes forth with, oh, okay, that makes sense. She understands me. So my next thing to do is that I have to work with the parents. I have to get them tight. And once we have that done, we're all coming from a place of authenticity, okay? There's a lot of integrity that's coming forth. And so the parents get to see that just because, let's say I'm a type 8, I like to be controlling, okay? Just because I'm a type 8, I can expect for my kid to be that way if I get to know my kids. It's like we're in our homes with these children and we don't even know them. So once they get to know the children, boom, they're talking because the parent is able to talk directly to that child. So, like I say, come from a place of integrity and getting to know your children and remember that we were once teenagers as well, okay? And so we have to realize that and communicate from that standpoint in a sense that we understand, okay? I think as adults sometimes we get to the point where we think that, well, I've arrived or, I'm a mature adult and this is the way that we did it when we were growing up. But the reality is that times are changing. Andy can tell you that. Technology, times are changing. So you've got to come forth from a place of integrity.
Very nice, thank you. So just for clarification, adolescence is the transition stage from teenagers to adulthood. So the transition stage is we're going to call an adolescent or adolescent stage. And a teenager has specific 13 to 19 years old. So when we are in that agreement, we would know when we are talking about adolescence, it's just a transitional stage, and teenager has a specific age requirement. Shreya, the next question is for you. What shuts you down? Do you think there are enough caring adults that do reach out to the teenagers positively? I'm not just talking about parents because it's their responsibility, but we'd just like to know from your perspective what really shuts you down in this world.
I think what shuts me down the most is when people aren't willing to listen or they're not willing to understand from another person's perspective or from my perspective. And I think definitely there is a good network of adults that are willing to listen beyond my parents, and my parents are great. They do always listen to me and they listen to my perspective, but I think teachers at my school, if they notice that something's wrong with you, then they sit down and they ask you, they stop you before you go out of your classroom, they ask, like, is everything okay? Can I talk to you? Can I help you? Teachers, and they don't even have to be your personal teachers. A lot of teachers that have never taught me before, just seen me in the hallway, seen that, maybe I've had a rough day or maybe I didn't do as well as I could have on a test. They say to me, hey, like, they stop me and they say, are you okay? Can we talk through something? I'll give you a late pass. Like, I think, and the problem isn't that there isn't enough adults that are willing to listen to the kids. I think it's that the kids have to be willing to talk to whoever's near them. That's all I have to say about that.
Very nice, thank you. So Marty, do you think we have enough public forums like this happening where there's a collaboration between the kids and adults? And if not, why not? And what should we do for these to happen more? Just like from now, Shreya's point, we get a great point that all they're looking for is someone to listen and not just advice. They just want someone to be listened to. But what advice would you give to adults who want to change and not just catch on the negative behaviors of the teenagers, but would want to start up that conversation? I'm trying to focus our first part on communication and the way we can improve communication, and what is that we are lacking as adults?
Well, the first part of your question, I don't think we can have enough forums like this, because the more we talk about it and the more comfortable we are, there's such a stigma around just mental health issues, suicide, problems in general. I think the more we talk about it, the healthier we as a community will become. And as far as advice to parents, I think recognizing, first of all, that our children have a different culture than we grew up in. And understanding that goes a long way, because we can't really identify with everything that they're going through. And, even some of the language that they use and some of the terms that they use, and trying to get on that same level with them will only confuse them and make parents look like fools for trying to. So it's important to just, ask questions. And I think, we're so interested in how they're doing in school, but asking questions like, did you meet any new friends today? Or things that involve the social aspect of their lives. Because one of the things, every 2 hours, a young person dies by suicide. And so, and there's lots of different reasons for that. And we could go into lots of different warning signs and lots of contributing factors. But one of the root things is loneliness. And loneliness can, you might say, well, they're popular, they're involved with activities, but it can be a perceived loneliness. And they may feel like people don't like them. And young people are really focused on how they look physically and their physical appearance and what their peers think of them. And they're starting to, at that age, starting to challenge more and come up with their own ideas about things. And so I know that when our son was growing up, my husband put something on our refrigerator that says, "Leave home while you still know everything," because they act like they know everything. And we can't give them that wisdom. Don't be afraid to let your children fail, because failure is actually good, and it builds resilience. And we were talking about that earlier. There's something called post-traumatic growth. It's, and you can look it up online. It's a 25 questionnaire, and it gives you feedback. And then you take it a year later, or even 6 months later, and it shows you how you've grown, maybe emotionally, maybe you're reaching out more. So there's an opportunity. The Chinese word for crisis means two things, both opportunity and for growth and change, and danger.
Sure.
So it can be dangerous, but it can also be an opportunity to grow and learn something. So don't be afraid to don't overprotect them, because sometimes making mistakes will help them, grow and do better. So
Great advice. Thank you, Marty, for that. Andy, the next, and I'm going to come to this side right after Andy's question. Andy, forums like this where we have open dialogues and conversations, and we're not just going to push the issues under the rug or But with diverse cultures, your thinking might be different from the diverse community that's here. But tell me, is it ultimately about mutual understanding and respect? And the question for you is, being the salesperson, how would you sell mutual understanding and respect? Or is it sellable?
Well, I would sell it the way that I sell anything, with storytelling. You have to help people understand things concretely. If you explain something in an abstract nature, for instance, if I give you the definition of respect, right? You're going to think about it cognitively, but you're not going to embrace it emotionally. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things we have to do in forums like this, and then one-on-one, and whether it's at a high school or whether it's at a hospital or wherever it might be, a counseling session, parenting session, you have to share with them. You have to come at them from an emotional level. You have to understand. Empathy was a really good word that's already been thrown out. You have to be able to empathize. But I think you can also use stories. So, for instance, if I want to share the idea of respect. And this is something that I'm talking to my own 13-year-old about right now. He kind of went from me being proud of him. He doesn't want me to be proud of him as much anymore. He wants me to respect him. It's one of the big things that changes with boys when they go from being little boys. They just want your daddy to be proud of them. But once he's 13, he now wants to be respected, right? And so when I explain to him some of the stories from my childhood or some of the things that I've experienced or a story, then he actually internalizes that in a much deeper way because it's a concrete example. So the way that I would sell that is, and I think at a society level, is we have to get better at finding ways of helping people have visuals. We have to create illustrations. We have to help people to see things rather than just saying things. And I think if we can do that, you can do what we do in sales and marketing. You can help people want it, right? You can't sell something unless they want it. And so if you can use storytelling, illustrations, concrete examples, if you can reach them emotionally, you can get a society to accept something more logically.
Well said. I thought I got the gotcha moment with you, but you just
keep coming at me. Keep coming at me.
You just turned it around. So, Guranga, the next question is for you. The question I have for you is, sometimes parents just want to know everything, right? They just want to know. And when do you think they are probing? I don't want to say fully probing nature, but to a certain extent becomes intrusiveness for you, right? What are the expectations, or what advice can you give the parents here where it's not out of fear, but they're just talking as normal, but not out of fear? So when do you think it becomes intrusive, or how can we change that?
Sometimes whenever a question about every little thing you do, that becomes extremely intrusive for me. And wait, can you say what you said?
Yeah, so what advice do you want to give the parents here from the teenagers' perspective that they don't have to always have this environment of fear that my son is going to do this, he's going to fail, he's going to fall here. So how do you say it's okay, it's fine, and create a communication that's just normal communication?
Well, sometimes parents, like as it was talked about earlier, how are you doing in school? And instead of like, did you meet any new friends today? I think it's about, well, at least it's talking about getting to know what you're doing, something like that. And getting to know if you learned anything new, getting to know, and yeah.
Okay, so what you're trying to say is that just ask normal questions, right? Okay, rather than not being intrusive of every little thing that you do.
Yeah.
To trust you. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay, awesome. Very nice, thank you. So, Kate, during this stage of adolescence or the teenage, and Andy would tell you at some point, why don't we call them young adults, and we're going to come to that stage, but they want to test out everything, like their cognitive skills, and they want to research out, they're looking for an identity, and they want to differentiate themselves, they want to be unique, and so does the alcohol problems, right? Is there a right age to start drinking, or can you tell us more? How can parents be watchful, but also not restrict, but also not to an extent where the kid says, wouldn't you rather have me drinking in front of you?
That's a good question for me. I think that my biggest thing I learned when my son was an adolescent and starting to experiment with drugs and alcohol, that I didn't listen to my gut instinct. And I try to teach mothers especially that the very first thing your gut tells you is always right. So I knew that my son was heading, and there is no right age to start drinking. There is not, it's not my generation, this is not 1976 anymore, and marijuana wasn't what it is today. So really, all drugs and alcohol underage is illegal. So I had to bring that point. It's an illegal thing. We can't do illegal behaviors. So I wasn't listening to my gut, and I wasn't paying attention to illegal activities. I was trying to fix my adolescent, because I always could, right? I could put the Band-Aid on his knee when he fell, and I could hug him when he was scared from a bad dream, but you can't fix an adolescent that's starting to go down that path of trouble, but you're aware of it, and you do know it. As a mother, as a father, you know it. You know when you're right, but then we get into how do we approach an adolescent who's going to be, don't care if you're proud of me, you would have to respect me. And my son was just that. So listening to my gut instinct, and if I had acted on it, but the other thing, the most important thing was I didn't ask for help in the right way. I thought I could fix it, but I needed professional help. Like the question to somebody, my school's counselor, he's starting to experiment with drugs and alcohol, what should I do? I wasn't going to the right places, and frankly, I really didn't know where they were, and I speak to that a lot. So if you start questioning yourself as a parent, your child's gonna sense it, and and a lot of parents are guilty of this, especially my son. He's now 28. He's in prison today. But the parties were going on, the parents all knew it. Everybody knew what was going on, but it's okay, it's in my house, keep it here, it's safe. It's never safe, and it's never right, and as a parent, you know it. So sitting down and understanding that you can't fix them, per se, you can lead and guide them. We talked about that being a true role model as a parent by saying, if it's illegal, it's not acceptable. If it's unhealthy, it's not acceptable. So, but I would now say to my son, if I could go back 10 years, I would say, or 15 years now, geez, getting old. I would say, what do you need for me to help you? I'm not the doctor. If you had cancer, I'd bring you to a cancer specialist. So how do we help? I can't help you, but there's people so we're gonna go find that help together. And we would work together as a family. So hope that answered your question.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it definitely did. So you're saying to follow your gut instinct and ask for help. Definitely. So that's a very good advice.
And then listen to your child. You know, he was saying things to me that were asking for help in his own way, but I didn't even really understand what he was really asking of me. So then it becomes frustrating for them, and then that rebellious kind of digging the heel thing kicks in. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Dr. Venkat, the question that many people here have on their mind is the impact of social media and the internet. Is it causing more, the pros and cons, is it causing more ill effects towards the adults or the teens, risky behaviors, or is it helping them bond more? So what is your take as a high school teacher that sees challenges on an everyday basis? Would you say yes, or might be come to a common ground on social media?
I do say yes to it, because nowadays the internet and the social media, it's playing a major role, See, as far as the internet is concerned, it has got a lot of resources online. The student can access all the resources, they can do the homework. And suppose being a teacher, suppose for that day, if I'm not teaching well for my students, they can access a lot of resources like YouTube, Khan Academy and all that. So I definitely go for it. But we have to look at the cons and pros of it. That is very important. Nowadays we have got so-called online cyberbullying. So when you go to the cyberbullying, it is online or offline, it's a bullying. It's a physical bullying that is brought to the online. So you have to take care of bullying. So who has to take care of? We are all, as a community, we are all have to take care of it. And I wanted to bring a couple of things like when Ms. Shreya and he was talking about see, please, being a parent, keep a comfort zone at home. You please do not ask the questions when they are entering into the home, what you were doing, what was going on in the school, something like that. please create a comfort zone where they feel like talking to you as a friend. Yeah, you're not a friend, I do agree with you like that, but you create a comfort zone for them to talk to you freely. And as far as the teachers are concerned, Ms. Shreya has to feel that I'm a comfortable person, she can talk to me, whatever she has concerns like. I have to create that comfort zone in my school. Then she can definitely talk to me. And as she said, I totally agree with you. See, if I'm teaching for her, she does need to come to me, like, she can go to a teacher where she feels comfortable, she can share the information. I'm with that. And as far as the bullying is concerned, that is a big concern to be taken care of. Everyone has to involve in that, the entire community. And no, I totally agree with the social media. All the students have to take the social media. We are not at the age of 18th century, we are in 21st century. The technology is taking place. So you go ahead with the technology. Whatever the resources are available, take use of them. Encourage the kids. But parents, you need to take care of the responsibility, because when the students are coming to the school, we have got all the securities for them to use the technology. You know what I'm saying? Like any kind of the e-device they have, it is going to be restricted to the extent what they are supposed to learn in the classroom environment. Where the issue is coming, when they are coming back home, when they are going to the internet, and let me tell you this, there are two types of cookies. One cookie you eat at home, lot of sugar in it, you know that. And there are other cookies online. So those cookies we have to take care of to give a good education using the technology. That's what I personally feel like.
So you meaning to say be a tough cookie?
Yes, it's a hard cookie. It's breaking a nutshell, like, you have to be very careful about that.
So does that mean you are affirming to their use of e-device 24/7?
It's not 24/7, like, no, see, they come to the school, no, they have a schedule, like, so you give a schedule. See, if you talk like that, I just want to bring something like, as far as the TV is concerned, the parents are with TV more time than the children. Do you agree with that? So the parents has to take care of that. Why I'm talking about this one, like, in a week of 24 hours, students stay in the school 9 to 10 hours. Make it they sleep for 8 hours. And how many hours left over?
It's a quiz.
And you know what? In these hours, how many hours they are staying with you comfortably? This is what you need to focus on. That makes all the difference. So if you take care of that, yes, they need to watch the TV, they need an entertainment, something like that. Why we should not focus on a physical kind of activity at home? That's what we were doing at our age. When we were learning, when we were at the high school, we were doing the physical kind of activity. That is missing nowadays. When they come to the school, they'll be on the e-device. They are coming back home, the same thing is going on. So that is affecting a lot. And I was talking to Mr. Andy about that one. That's the screen they are looking at, that has got lot of intensity, like, I got my glasses. And they will be getting the glasses in a couple of years. So these kind of devices should be avoided, not hurting them and their feelings. This is very important. That's what I have been watching with my kids in the school.
Very nice, thank you so much. And the next question is sort of similar to what Dr. Venkat was speaking, Sergeant Rivera. Is it okay for a person to post a video online, either compromising another person or something that the person does not have permission to post, which leads to cyberbullying, right? And is it called the freedom? Is that the freedom of speech or freedom of action for that specific person who's doing this? Or the schools do have anti-bullying policies. But what other resources do parents have or any of the community members have to stop cyberbullying?
That's a really good question. posting things that you are not given permission, a picture, it is somebody's privacy. So you can't do that. And as he was saying, times are changing. We're in the 21st century, and we had a law in place here in the state of Georgia, and I'm sure in a lot of states, about harassing phone calls. You can't call people, you can't harass them. There is a law against that. Times have changed so much now that the law has added something to say email bullying, text messages, all these things, because it does happen. And so as things change, laws change. So texting somebody to hurt them, hurt their feelings, that is a way of bullying, and that, you know, there is a law against that. And, you know, we're all talking about communication. I think the real most important thing is that start communication with your children when they're young. You want to talk to them about sex? Don't be afraid to do that. They want to talk about drugs? Don't be afraid to do that. Educate yourself and then speak to your children about it. What's the right age? What you should say. Don't be shocked when your kid comes to you in 8th grade and says somebody offered them some marijuana. Marijuana is the most used drug nowadays, like it was probably in the 70s. We go in a circle. And so now that another state has made it legal, this state has not, but that's the most used drug by kids here. And they say that it's a gateway drug to other drugs. I don't know. I mean, that's what experts say. What I do know is that they're starting younger and younger to use these drugs. So communication, talk to them. You've got to say not only how was school today, but anything important? What's your favorite subject? What are you doing in school? What are these, who's your favorite teacher? This starts the conversation. It doesn't mean they're going to tell you the truth, but at least it starts the conversation. And what I mean when I say don't be shocked, don't act like there's something wrong with it. No, they shouldn't do it. You can't do drugs. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's illegal. You're going to scare them into wanting to talk to you. So just be very open. When my daughter came to me, and this is a true story, she came to me, she was in 8th grade. She says, Mom, my friend's 14 years old, and he has marijuana. He smokes marijuana. Can I try it? I was like, and I didn't go, oh my God, no, you can't do this. Oh, no. You know, I said, well, first of all, think about why you want to do it. Think about what the consequences are. I'm a police officer. God forbid you were to do this, and now you're going to shame me. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be out there. I mean, the whole department. So now I brought it on. How is she going to feel if I'm affected? So you always have to have those conversations at home. Have them research. What does marijuana do? What is it used for? What are the consequences? What does it? Google is everywhere. And my kids ask me a tough question. Can you Google it? just Google it, and they're very good. And in the 21st century, they all know how to use computers.
Google Daddy, they call it.
Google Daddy, is that what they call it? Well, see, I'm not all that, but I do know about the law, and the law says that you can't be harassing somebody by text. You can't be doing this. There is a state charge for that. So I recommend that if this is happening to your child, and your child feels like they're being bullied, first of all, you have to speak out, and you have to go into the school. You have to, talk to the teachers. Go and talk to the administration. Sometimes in the administration, they don't take these things very seriously. But as a parent, you should take them seriously, because as adolescents and as teenagers, they're searching for themselves. And everything that how they see themselves is reflected on the things that they do. So if they have low self-esteem, maybe they're not doing well in school, they're going to be easily manipulated, they're going to suffer through different things, that maybe they're going to want to try drugs. So all these things have to be in the open, and like I said, don't be shocked when your kids ask you questions. There has to be that line of communication and open. And remember, you're a parent first, then you could be their friend. However, there's a huge distinction, and if there's a problem, always go to the school. Make it a serious point, because I think that Marty said suicide is huge, and we get parents, and there's a difference between the culture. In the Hispanic culture, parents are afraid to discipline their children, and they're afraid because a lot of our parents and a lot of the Hispanic community where I'm at, a lot of them are undocumented. So in the school, the kids are taught, your parents can't hit you, your parents can't, they can't touch you, your parents can't, and this isn't, the child goes home and says, you touch me, I'm gonna call the police. And this is very cultural in our community. And it's sad that you can't feel that you can't discipline your children, and here they are at 9 years old telling you what to do. That's why I say a tough love goes a long, long way. Give them the phone, let them call. You know what I mean? And officers are people, and we'll come to your home if we feel that, your child bullying you, we'll make sure to let the child know that that's not the way it works. Your parents can discipline you. We do have corporal punishment here in the state of Georgia, so you can discipline your child as long as it doesn't cross the line, of abuse.
Sure.
So, going back to, your question, I think that,
Sure.
texting, bullying, you can always, the state law says that you can't do that. So I think take it very seriously, go to the school, speak to the teachers. If you feel that you're not getting anywhere with the teachers, go to the counselors, go to the principal. I mean, they're there to provide, the security that you feel you deserve and your children deserve when they're at school. And sometimes I think that sometimes staff don't take these things seriously enough, and children sometimes feel lost.
So following up on the similar question, and yes, please feel free to rebut or respond further. The next question I had was, suppose a student wears a controversial T-shirt and calls it a freedom of speech or his or her First Amendment. How would we address that? So you sort of talked about it.
But there is another law, and there's rules in the school, so you really have to go what the school says. You don't want to be vulgar. You don't want to stand out like that as a person who's being vulgar or being rude, or you have to be sensitive to everybody else's ideas and respect them. And so I think that goes a long way with home. How's the home environment? Why, so there's a lot of questions that have to be asked. And I think that as adults, we have to help each other in times when we feel that something has come up like that, that's a difficult topic, go to the school. But anything that's going to cause that type of controversy, the schools have their own, their own rules. Taking something to school, wearing something that's offensive to someone, obviously, that's not showing, it's showing a lack of respect. And so I think that it shouldn't be done, and it really doesn't have anything to say, because there is a law against saying something that's going to hurt other people, So, I mean, we have these rules in place, but we really don't enforce them.
Sure.
But I'm here to tell you that we do have state laws against, first of all, like you said, bullying. Some states have really strict laws against bullying. So I say that you educate yourself on what the state law is on bullying, find out what your school does about it. And, for sure, when you're at home with your kids and you see that they've changed in personality, or they're doing things that maybe they didn't do before, maybe their grades are failing, there's an issue, and get to the bottom of it, because, it's real. Children's issues are real. If your child is maybe going to experiment with drugs, you should be the first to know. So like when my daughter asked me that question, I didn't go, oh my God, no, because I don't want her to be afraid to but I use examples. If I see something on TV, if I see something, another student, anywhere, there's always so many real life experiences that people go through that you can use it as examples. So we go to a house party. I mean, culturally, a lot of our community drinks a lot. They do drink alcohol. They have a baby's party. They have alcohol. And, I don't always agree with it, but there's an example. There's a real life, example. So you see somebody that's getting a little tipsy, you're saying, well, see, like, that doesn't look very well. That kind of looks, just doesn't look good. So, think about your surroundings and who else you're going to hurt. When my children used to argue when they were little, I always used to turn it around on them. I would be so distraught that they would argue and fight. Kids are going to do that. And if they would fight, I would turn it around on them and say, oh my God, that hurts my feelings. It hurts me so much that you guys are arguing. I just can't. And they would think about what they were doing, because now it's affecting me, not just them.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think
Thank
that, a lot of things, open communication. Don't be shocked about what your kids say. Talk about gender. Maybe a lot of the kids, that's an issue now too. Kids who kill themselves because they feel that nobody understands them. Their parents are going to get, are not going to understand maybe their, how they feel about their own gender, and open communication.
Right.
Big.
Dr. Venkat, did you have any? Yes.
Shall I add something to
Yes.
it?
Quickly.
See, as far as the cyberbullying, see, we have laws in place, am I right? the law's going to take care of all these things. But at home, what you can do, like, see, I see like, the social media is really good. You can make friends across the world. You need them. Tomorrow, your children might be going to some other country, starting the business. So if they start the business, they should know, they should understand the culture and the diversity of the place where the children are going over there. So what I suggest, when they are making a kind of friendship online, let them have a video calling, so that you can easily track of that rather than texting and what of the things doing it, like, I would like to see that way. So that definitely going to help how to track couple of things at home. No doubt, you got all the laws there, they are going to take care of all these things, but before that, you have to take care of these things.
So you're sort of emphasizing on the parents' responsibility on raising their kids first, and then the laws, and then the teachers.
Because
Got it.
they are
Yes.
my children, like, so I have to
Definitely.
take care of them.
Very good. Thank you so
No,
much.
I agree, and just really quick on that, you're talking about being intrusive. You can't be too intrusive when you have a child, and anything that's in your home, anything that comes into your home, it's your business. So intrusive, yeah, maybe they feel like, but anything that's in the home, in their book bag, when they bring it home, in their bedroom, that's not intrusive. You're being a parent. If you need to check their room, check under their bed, check their book bags. I mean, there's not, unless they pay for their, the roof over their heads, nothing is private in a home.
Sure.
Everything is, check their drawers, you don't know what you're gonna find. Intrusive, I'm sorry, and still you start paying your bills, your own bills, and a roof over your head. There's nothing being intrusive about going into somebody's kid and checking, what they have, and asking questions, it's okay.
Before the next question, to Dr. Tofia, I have a quiz for you guys. Some months have 31 days, some have 30 days. How many have 28 days? Who said one? Every month. She got it. So these are teenagers' quizzes, right,
No,
Kurangai?
actually, I thought of answering that.
So she gets one. So thank you, Anjali, along with your baby girl. Thank you. So the next question, Dr. Tofia, when we opened up for registrations, the attendees had an opportunity to ask questions, and they did. And this was on top of their mind, sex. So tell us, are the parents the ones who are supposed to talk to kids about sex, or is it the schools? Because the schools, middle schools, have a curriculum of abstinence, total abstinence, but then there is so much more than total abstinence, especially for a curious teenager or adolescent stage. Can you tell us more that can sort of enlighten us on, maybe there's no right or wrong answer, but something that can enlighten us as we become teenage parents and leave from here? What is the right strategy?
Okay. Remind me of one of my clients. He keeps reminding me that he's going through puberty. Okay. It's like, what does that mean? So he talks about, he's taking better care of himself and he's wearing deodorant and stuff like that. And he's in a place now where he's actually getting ready to go to middle school. So he's in a place now and he's mature enough where I recommended to his mom that she start gradually talking to him about, sex or whatever, because he's ready for it. And I think that we as parents, we have to realize that if we don't do it, their peers will do it. So I think knowing your child, okay, you can get a sense as to when they're ready for whatever. And like everybody has been saying, you're asking questions and you're opening up that space for them to communicate. So they're feeling comfortable with you, and you know your child, okay? You know your child. So, we definitely have to do that at home. And they do it in school, but we have to do it at home because we don't want their educators to be their peers, because we have no idea what they're being taught, okay?
Very nice. Did anybody else wanted to follow up on that specific question?
So the conversation about it, I haven't had it, but that would probably be the most awkward conversation I've ever had. But as Sergeant Rivera was saying, that like, oh my God, like, no, don't do that, acting all shocked. Instead, like, look into it, find out for yourself, see how it is. It also shows the child that you're willing to listen, you're actually showing them a bit of respect, and you're treating them like young adults instead of like a minor as you used to treat them.
Very nice, so thank you.
I agree that.
Yeah, what I was saying, thank you so much, for validating that, because in reality, when my daughter told me that, inside I was dying. I wanted to jump up and say, are you kidding me? But I had to reserve myself, and I had to say, well, what do you think, what do you think the consequences would be? And you turn the question back onto them and let them think about, oh, wait, what are the consequences? It's very easy, but let me tell you, your kids are having that conversation in grammar school, in middle school. It's already being talked about, not only sex, but drugs. So, if they feel that you're not gonna be open enough to talk to them, they're not gonna talk to you. They're gonna talk to their peers, and their peers will be there, like, the doctor said, that the peers are gonna be their professionals. So, having that conversation and not being shocked and, I think is the best thing. Like,
Okay, very nice. So just to remind the audience that there's hot chai and pakoras and samosas. Please feel free anytime to go grab and come, get your plate here. So, Ms. Shreya, go ahead. Definitely would
Something
like to hear
add
from you.
that. I think one of the reasons that a lot of kids get into sex and drugs and a lot of bad habits is because they don't understand the implications of their actions. And I think if you educate your children way before they get into high school, middle school, they'll understand like I said, what the results that can come from whatever actions they go into. And I think you don't approach it from the standpoint where you tell the kid, okay, we're going to talk about sex. And when you go into a conversation with your child like that, and you bring up the topic and it almost sounds like a lecture, and that automatically, I can tell you from the standpoint of any child, whenever you go into a conversation and you present the topic and it sounds like a lecture, they're not going to take you as seriously as if you were to just mention, if you're casually having conversation and you mention an instance where, some child got pregnant and her life completely got turned into a different path than she expected. If you bring it up in a way where you don't present the topic you're talking about, it's going to stick with them more. And they're going to remember that more than if you're going to, like I said, present the topic beforehand. So I think the most important thing is definitely educating your children in a way where you know that they're going to listen to you and they're going to remember what you tell them.
Very
I just
nice.
wanna
I
make sure I
keep
say that.
hearing from this panel so far the word listen. I think that's the one that I've heard many times. Andy, this is a follow-up to the same question. Do you think as parents we are more pressured now than our parents were, especially on this topic?
I think that some of that the pressure might be the current generation that we're in too, that we feel more pressure from it. I think that the theme is listening. I think that's true. And I think that the pressures are the same as they were when I was younger. I think that there's the perception that there's greater pressure because it's coming from the internet. We're just so much more, we have so much more information coming at us, and I think that creates pressure. But the truth is, it's you and your child, right? And so I think that along with listening, I think there's something we need to add to the listening, is I think that there does have to be a pursuit. I mean, I know that there's this sense that, my child's gonna tell me when something's wrong and I'm gonna be there to listen, but I think there has to also be a pursuit there too. You have to pursue your children. And I think, I remember when I had my two oldest boys, I actually took them to a cabin and we were gonna just cook a campfire and, play some video games and then, go into town to get some good food. We just have a guy's weekend out, right? And we did. I actually taught them how to make a fire, and they thought that their dad, who's a technology guy, couldn't make a fire from scratch. I showed them that's not true. That could actually create fire, right? And so they thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then we had the birds and the bees talk. This is the first time I kind of brought it up to them, but I tried to do it in a way that wasn't weird. It's almost impossible not to do that, right? But my oldest was looking at me, and I was explaining this to him, and he said, okay, all right, that's cool. I got it. And I look over at the younger one, and his head is in his hands, and he looks up and he just says, I was too young for that. So like, great, I screwed one up and one's okay. We're all right here. I'm 50-50, 50%. But I realized, when I look back at my father, who's 90 years old now, right? My dad was already old when I was born, right? He was in his 60s when I was 10. He had one conversation with me and never once again pursued me. Now, was he listening? My dad was always willing to listen, but he didn't pursue me. And I wish, looking back, that my dad had come after me and he had asked me some questions and he had initiated more with me when I was in my teens, right? And so with my kids nowadays, I try not to do the thing where I want to talk about sex, okay? We have an evening, mom's away, we're going to have a sex talk. What do you think? But I try to do it in a way that's more of a friendship. But I think this goes back to what both of our teens have said today, which I think is very wise, is that you don't just all of a sudden introduce your child a question that's strange, right? Because what it's showing is that I'm now trying to create a relationship situation that we haven't had together. So if I'm actually sitting there playing a Nintendo Switch or playing basketball with my son or playing ping pong or something, and we're having a great conversation, it's amazing how while playing ping pong or while taking a walk together or walking the dog or just doing something cool, like the other day I was with one of my older kids and he's drawing dragons. That's what he's into right now, drawing dragons, right? And so he loves fantasy, he loves dragons, so he's drawing. So I sit down and get a piece of paper, I'm drawing dragons with him. Right? And we're just having fun, And then the next morning I drew a note to him before school and I said, I had to go to work early and I said, draw me a dragon today. He thought that was so cool. So when he got home from school, I don't know how his day at school went, but the first thing he wanted to do was come home, was not me to ask him, did you make a friend today or how'd your day go? He wanted to draw dragons with me. So that's what we did. I didn't need to ask him about school. I just needed to do something cool because I'm his father and he's my son and we love being together. And then in those moments, he'll ask questions, and I'll ask him questions about things like sex or peer pressures or those kinds of matters. And it's amazing how in the comfort of our relationship, because he feels like I get him, that we can talk about issues, and I can bring them up. So I think we have to have the right relationship with our kids, and we can bring up topics. We can pursue them. We don't just have to listen. You have to listen in those moments, but we also have the right to introduce conversation as well.
Very nice, Andy. So for the parents who've been enlightened and they say, well, you know what? This has been great. I heard so many experts speak about this. I'm ready to talk to my child, and he or she's at the age. Should they say, kiddo, I need to talk to you? Nope, right? Okay. So what would be the first sentence? I hadn't planned to ask this question, but it's just coming out of the conversations. Should be in a comfort zone. They should be already doing something.
Absolutely.
Just like what Andy
I
described.
think it's really easy right now with the Me Too, what's going on right now. I think that's a great discussion between the mothers and their daughters. I think that, if you use that, that's what I'm saying, you use real life experiences to show examples of what's going on. So what's going on right now is a lot of women are feeling empowered to tell about what their experiences were when they were younger. In my line of work, we see a lot of sexual abuse within the families. And so women don't say, women don't talk, children don't say it, girls won't say it. They're too scared, too fearful, embarrassed, feel that they're going to break the family. They don't want the controversy, they don't want the drama. So they hold a lot of things in. And so now is a great time to talk about things like that. So what do you think about that? All these women coming out and talking about their abusers, or do we even believe them? Because there's still a lot of skepticism. So I think sometimes when women say, this happened to me, oh, that couldn't have happened. There's no proof, there's no evidence. Now we have a lot of technology where we can prove a lot of things. However, I think now is a great time for girls to talk to their mothers, because it would be very awkward for a father to talk to their daughter about that. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just a little bit more awkward. And so even with your daughters, I'm not saying it's not going to be awkward, it is, but now is a great time to do it, because now it's on the news, it's what's happening today, and so it would be much easier to open up that line of communication between what's happening and and your sex and your body and what should and should not, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, when you should wait, when you shouldn't wait, all these things, and it's a good time right now to talk about that, I think.
Kate, any quick follow-up?
Yeah, so the trending thing that she's saying, the hashtag Me Too, that's what we can use now to talk to our kids pretty easy. Hey, what do you think about the hashtag Me Too? But we didn't have that a few years back, but we did have, I would be in the car and my son would be listening to some crazy music and I would make a comment just, do you really think if you drag her down the street by her hair, she's gonna really like you? And so it was a little bit of humor for him, and he'd be like, no, that's kind of dumb. So we used the little opportunities of whatever was on the radio or now on the device, whatever's trending, and that's your opportunity to speak to your child.
Very Very
without
nice.
threatening them. You know, hey, what do you think about me too?
Sure, that's a good one. Thank you, Sergeant.
I just wanted to say, statistics tell us that kids don't talk to their parents. They talk to each other. And one of the things you can do is encourage them to have at least one other, a trusted adult that they can go to and talk to. You know, kids are often afraid of our reactions to things, and we don't always do well, and they're frightened. So having another trusted adult that they can talk to, who just, that they feel that they can tell things to, is just huge.
Sure.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, yes.
I love that comment, and one of the reasons why is because, you know, we spend so much time as parents trying to help our children overcome fear from the day they're born. Even just to walk is a step of fear, a literal step of fear, right? I'm gonna fall. And then as they get older, we as parents, we want our children to overcome fear so they grow in strength and ability and they can thrive and those kinds of things. But the problem is that for many adults, we have stopped facing fears. And so our children actually see us as fearful people. And so when they want to share something with us, they are concerned that we're going to react in fear. And so oftentimes they don't want to have that relationship with us because they're worried about how we're going to respond to something. So if they see us as the kind of person who asks for forgiveness, who faces their fears, who struggles, who share things with our kids, I think it lets them know that we're actually the kind of people that can handle the things that they want to talk to us about.
Very nice. Go ahead, Dr. Tofia.
Yeah, and I think that brings it back to modeling certain behavior. And I think that's also the reason why some adolescents are more eager or feel at ease at talking with a therapist as opposed to their parents. Because some parents do show up as possessing a lot of fear. That means that we have not gotten in touch with our stuff. And that's why when I go into the home, I have to work with the family. Because if I'm working with this kid, you know, and we're doing real well, and all of a sudden it's like he or she has to return to what I call a toxic environment, then that's going to be a problem because my kid is going to bounce back, or my adolescent is going to bounce back to that old behavior. So when I go in and work with the entire family, that means that we social workers say that we have to take care of the entire system. So it makes a difference.
Very nice. So we all, as a community, play a role in raising kids like the kids are raised in a village. We come back to that model. Before I ask my next question to Marty, the quiz I have for you guys is, how can a man go 8 days without sleep? Anyone? Who said that? Oh, Ranjit, he got it. Thank you. I think it shows that he has a teenager at home, right? Very nice.
No, it looks like he prepared for the question.
He prepared. So, Marty, the next question is sort of very disturbing for the sense that losing a child in a very young age is very hard. And especially if the child has taken his or her own life because of frustrations and hopelessness in this world of not anyone understanding them. I actually got a call last year from a friend. I didn't get a call, I actually read this news and I had to call her mom because I knew that family very well and I always adored that teenager. She used to go to UNC and very smart. She has played with my kids when we were in a conference. And then I hear that she's no more. She took her own life. It was really hard. It was like heart-wrecking. Tears just flowed for the next 2 weeks. I kept contemplating what's going on, why. I felt responsible, even though I'm here in Georgia, because I could never imagine the smartest kid, okay, very much interactive with society, playing with smaller kids, setting examples, great scores, great grades, very socially involved, and all of a sudden she's gone. It affected me emotionally, internally, and I started talking to teenagers and moms and dads, and I said, please, this is very important. You can't put mental health under the rug. My question to you, suicide is the second most leading cause of death, 12 to 18 or 18 to 24. what are the warning signs and why? And I can still become tearful. I feel responsible, but tell me, we all become responsible. How can we prevent that?
Well, that's a good question, and there's lots of warning signs. And, not to be confused with sometimes typical behavior. And how do you discern typical behavior from trouble? And so I think the best thing, you can go to any site and look up warning signs for suicide, and it confuses people sometimes. And, I'd like to think of the 4 most common feelings associated with suicide, and those are feelings of loneliness, worthlessness, helplessness, and hopelessness. So, and there's this tunnel vision that occurs when someone is going through, whether it's real or perceived, crisis, that not only do they feel helpless to do anything about it, but they feel hopeless that anybody can do anything about it. And so to kind of break through that is, really important. To watch for things like just changes in your child, whether it be school, behaviors, social activities. Now, just to give you an example, if you notice that suddenly your child wants to spend more time with their friends than with you, that's a change, but it's a positive thing, But if you notice that they're spending a lot of time in their room and they're not engaging with other young people and not engaging with you, then that could be a problem. So, kind of trying to discern those kinds of things, but watching for, mental health problems, and we know that 90% of kids who die by suicide have depression, mental illness, or substance abuse, that to watch for things like their thinking, their emotions, and their behaviors, and watch for changes in those things. If you see that they're thinking about things that it doesn't seem healthy, then that could be a sign that they're experiencing maybe anxiety or something else. And mental health problems begin, half of all mental health problems begin at age 14 and 3/4 by age 24. So, and anxiety can start as young as 7 years old, but typically around 11 years old. So watching for those things and mostly changes, but kids are really impulsive, and that's when they're impulsive and they take more risks as teenagers, so they don't really realize the finality of the action of suicide. And you're right, Nazira, it does affect families. Suicide leaves behind many survivors, friends and family, the school district, the teachers, the principal, the friends in school. It really does affect a lot of people. And so, for families who have experienced a loss by suicide, there are resources. They're not alone. Every 13 minutes, someone dies by suicide. Actually, a lot, it's more like 11 and a half minutes, but so it happens more than you think. So there are a lot of people out there that are survivors of suicide, meaning when we talk about survivors of suicide, those are people who've lost someone to suicide. So there are organizations that help. There are support groups in the community. We offer, many in this community. So there's help and there's hope. But just like any other grief, we always think of things we could have done better, maybe spent more time with the person, or, maybe we missed something about their health, and we blame ourselves. So it's so much worse when there's a suicide because it can be prevented. And so if families feel that, then they think they're responsible for it. But no parent wants to see their child die by suicide. So No parent wants that. So if they can get in community with other survivors, that's a really good thing. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention offers a survivor program where they will actually go to the home of someone who's lost someone to suicide. And also the Link Counseling Center in Sandy Springs has wonderful support groups, and they do have a program where people can go into the home and help individuals who experience the loss by suicide.
Thank you so
Does that
much,
answer
Marty.
your
So,
question?
yes, so you're basically saying there is help available and resources available that we can reach out if we ever doubt that our child is going through some tough situation. Is there any quick question and answer tool or a quick tool of questions? Before even reaching out for help, to just find out within ourselves, within the house?
Well, the biggest thing is being comfortable in asking that question. Are you thinking about suicide? And using those words. It might be uncomfortable, and I do a lot of trainings where I get people to practice that. And it's really uncomfortable, especially when you're not thinking about it. But just to get people used to using those words, because what it does is it doesn't put the idea in their head. It opens up communication. It says to the person, wow, this person is comfortable hearing about it. And, they may say no, and sometimes you might have to ask more than once. But if you are recognizing that this person is experiencing emotional pain, it's always a good question to ask. And ask directly, and don't ask in a way that might elicit a no response. Like, you wouldn't say, you're not thinking about suicide or killing yourself, are you? Because then they're going to know that you're afraid. So the best thing is to just be as direct as you can. And I always say the best way to ask is to say, I've noticed some changes in you, and I'm really concerned, and I don't want anything bad to happen to you. And I don't want you, it's not uncommon for someone who's been going through some of the things that you're experiencing to think about wanting to die. And I'm wondering if you're feeling that way right now.
Sure.
And that's a really good way to ask, because it's non-threatening, and it tells the person that you've been listening to their pain and watching their pain. So.
Thank you, Marty. We have 10 more minutes. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just would like to share my personal experience when I was working in a previous school. I'm telling you guys, I do not know how it is going to work north side of Atlanta, down south. A lot of community problems are there, and I cannot explain those things because I have got my own code of ethics as a teacher. There used to be one student, he was very brilliant. He is an adult, we call him like an adult, and he was really doing well in math.
Dr. Venkat, can you hold on to the mic?
He was really doing well in math because I tried to teach math for high school students. Suddenly he started coming to the school and sleeping, not doing any work, and we were not understanding. And you know what, being a teacher, we always do multitasking. It's not just teaching. We'll be like a kind of a police sheriff outside, standing in the hallway, looking what's going on around in the school. What the students knows better than anybody else. We were just observing, and I was talking to other teachers and all that. And suddenly stopped coming to the school. Then I called the parents. I always call the parents on my personal cell phone. But still, administrators say that I should not use my personal cell phone, but I use it. Because I make a kind of documentation, I just send a letter to the parent that I'm using my cell phone. If something goes wrong, you are the responsible. And if any student wanted to call, he will be calling through the parent's cell phone. So I'm okay with that. So I was trying to call a couple of times, even parents did not respond. Sometime we had a parent conference, and we were discussing what was actually going on, why he was not performing well. And parent did not say anything on that day. Later on, my counselor told me that they have got some issues at home. And of course, I can't reveal it. And after a couple of days, the student was separated from the parents. So if we had not called the parents, things would have been different. So prevention is better than cure. Whether it is a parent or teacher or any community member, like, you can easily figure it out how the student is behaving, or how your child is behaving, like, you can definitely take care of those things.
Very nice. Shreya, the next question is sort of following up on what Dr. Venkat said, is how do teens feel, and this might not be a personal question for you, but in general, how do teens feel about parents arguing at home, right? And then you have friends whose parents are divorced, or you have friends who are still living in a toxic environment. How do teens cope up with that? Because that's not in no way developing self-esteem for teenagers, seeing their parents as adults argue over small things or big things and make it a big deal. Do you want to say become adults, or do you want to say I'm just going out? Like, how do teens cope up with such situations?
I think to a certain extent, when parents argue, it's important because you have to talk through certain conflicts. But like I said, it's to a point. When it gets to a point where, say your parents get in a big fight and they ignore each other for a few days or something, that definitely has a huge toll on their child. And I guess the way that my peers would feel is that the way that my peers would feel is that we don't feel safe at home. And I think that's definitely something you want your child to feel is safe in their own home. And when they'll have to understand that parents have to fight to a certain extent, like I said, but they want to feel safe. And when parents argue, you feel like it's your fault, or maybe you feel like maybe if I did something differently, they wouldn't be fighting. Or is there something I can do to help, because you're the only other person in the house besides your parents. So yeah, the only thing I really have to say for that is that fighting to a certain extent, like I said, is important because you have to work through conflicts, and otherwise you're not going to solve anything in the house. But be careful of the extent to which you fight with your partner, because you never know what your kid is feeling.
Sure. So what you're saying is you want the parents to know that the teenagers are not feeling safe at home when it gets to tough arguments between them or among them.
And a lot of times they can pin it on themselves, and that's not healthy for them either.
Sure.
So keeping that in mind.
Okay, thanks. Andy, so we'll have one round of questions for each one of us, and then we'll move to the debate. Andy, tell us briefly about financial responsibility, right? So your kid might say, I don't want to work like my dad. He, goes at 7, comes back at 7, no family time, just earning money all the time, and I see only slow improvements from...
That sounds horrible.
So how do you teach? So is it okay to say become like me or become a better person? Or how do you teach them? Do you tell them, hey, then you are in high school, go earn?
Wow. I'm going to quit my job right now. That's a good question. I see where you're getting here. I think it's important. It's very important that we're not just teaching our children how to become adults. We're not just helping them try to learn what it means to become an adult. I don't think of adulthood and teenagerhood, something we've talked about, right? I see it as preparing teens for what's coming, giving them the skills, right? So for me, I want my children to learn what it means to be a leader, because I feel that leadership gets at the heart of what they're going to be doing the rest of their life. And I'm talking about personal leadership. What do they see for themselves? How do they think of other people? How do they think of other people in their family? What does it look like to be a leader? What are the traits of a leader? What are the benefits what is the net result of becoming a leader? And one of those things is making money, right? But other things is having impact on other people's lives. Other things that they can look forward to is having a position of authority where they can make a difference in the world. And so if you can start teaching those things, you can start helping teenagers visualize those things, they start to get a very different perspective. Right now, yes, they still need to play games, they still need to have fun, they still need to hang out with their buddies, they still need to do things that they're interested in, right? But I think we also have to interject in their leadership. And that's not a type of leadership. It can be leadership in whatever they want to do, right? If they're interested in programming, let them become a leader in programming. If they're interested in healthcare, if they're interested in just traveling, or they're interested in a sport, leadership can be part of all of that. So getting to the heart of it is even at a young age, helping people, mentoring people, whether they're children or adults, to have a vision for their life. If you know where you're going, if you have a sense of where you're going, it's not about money, right? It's about the vision for what you're pursuing. It's about what you see for yourself. What kind of a person do you want to be? How do you want to help people? What do you want to create in your life? And now money comes along with that. That's a part of that conversation. How do you save money? How do you be responsible with money? How do you help others do the same thing? You know, you have to teach financial literacy, but at the same time, money is a part of your vision, a greater vision for your life. And whether they're 5 years old, all the way up to teenagers, to adults, we all need that level of mentorship. Personal leadership, a vision for your life, money's a part of it.
Thank you so much. Guranga, do you think parents of today are facing or understanding the teens' problems, or you might not know the problems that they faced while growing up, but do you think they are facing more problems dealing with the teenagers of today? Is there a balance
Dealing with the teenagers? Like
on an everyday basis on teenagers' challenges?
Okay. Well, it kind of depends which situation the child and the adult have or is going through, because I don't know, was there a lot of social media like in the 80s, if any?
Wait, I think it came through in 86, after 86, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well,
There's no.
well, if you're saying,
on the mic.
sorry. Oh, okay. Well, if you're saying that I'm being harassed online, the adult can't relate because that wasn't there then.
Yes.
But if you're gonna do like with the drug dealing problem, like my child is smoking marijuana, or, and then so if the adult did the same thing, sure, maybe he or she can relate. But it mainly depends on the situation, and since teens are going through different things that the adults weren't, it depends like how the adult and the teen deal with it. But otherwise, as I said earlier, it varies.
So it's situational, which is it's a very good answer. So it depends on each situation. Very nice, thank you, Guranga. Kate, the question for you is, the recent reports shows that the kids' use of drugs has dramatically decreased, except for marijuana and vaping, alcohol or e-cigarettes. Can you briefly talk about, we touched base on how do we identify if our kids or might be or considering or drugs, but are there any specific advice or recommendations you want to give our parents here about if their kids are trying to experiment on any of the drugs? And you guys, you'd be surprised to know the names of all the drugs out there. And I'm reading, I'm like, what? Tons and tons of names in the funniest and the most bizarre ways that they are administered.
Well, there's drugs have been, it's throughout history, and drugs cycle around and they become popular or not popular among teenagers. Not all teenagers experiment with drugs. They typically have a kind of a pattern of style of teenager that would be more apt to try. And it's actually quite identifiable in elementary school, that kind of pattern. My son was a classic example of, he was a thrill seeker, risk taker, leader of the pack, funny kind of guy, liked to try new things. He wasn't afraid of things. So there are certain things you can watch for. Drugs of choice for kids, you know, it's what's in the school today, what's in this back, you know, in the neighborhood today. The drugs are crazy, weird. In our generation, it was always drugs. As you know, the 70s was rampant with drugs. My high school was riddled with them in a suburban community, much like this. So the drugs are always there. The types of drugs and again, it's not my fault. I would never have considered bringing drugs into my father's home. Just wasn't even going to happen because I was more afraid of my father than I was of the local police. I had a healthy respect for what would happen to me. So that respect is lacking right now for children. I don't believe really respect their parents or their administrators and their teachers the way they need to. The way we did it, it's a little different. And the reason is we permit that. We allow them to bring the drugs and the alcohol into our homes. There's college parties happening. We know they're underage drinking. So again, it's always happened. It's a matter of how do we gain their respect, and they gain our respect. That drugs are illegal, and I like your point always to say, tell me what you think the consequences will be. Google it, of you drinking now at the age of 16. So, but go with your gut. Don't accept it and expect behaviors to be, this is my home. We don't bring illegal drugs into my home. But also, what's going on that makes you want to try that? And the drugs are seriously dangerous now, and they're killing children at alarming rates. They're very, very powerful. The marijuana is not what the marijuana used to be. So, it's always just not one pill, not once, never would be the quick answer to that. So that's, a lot, but again, go with your gut, moms and dads, and don't be afraid of it, and don't be afraid to sit your son down and say, hey, I think you might be doing drugs, and I'm scared to death, and we're gonna go get help today, get in the car. And if they say not getting in the car, say, oh, yeah, you're getting in the car. Because had I said that, my son would be sitting here on the panel.
So thank you so much, Kate. So we really appreciate your personal reason for being here. One quiz and then quick 40-second closure for each of the panelists. The last quiz is, what question can you never answer yes to? The question is, what question can you never answer yes to? What is that question that you can never answer yes?
Are you married?
You almost got there, Fred. It's, are you asleep? So, Fred, you get a gift. Thank you. We don't want to go as extreme as being dead, so I'm trying to make this a little bit humorous. So, 3 questions for each panelist, and you could answer it in a quick yes, no thing, okay? Back then, it was get married, have kids, raise them well, have a nice family, everything will be well. Things have changed now. It's all about young people's career aspirations, what they want to be, when they want to be, getting married late, having kids late, or even thinking I don't prefer kids. I just want to improve my career life. So with all this being said, what are your thoughts? Should it be street smart, academic smart, right? And the next question is, what age is the right age to date for teenagers? I want all of us, yes.
Okay,
So two questions.
All right, so again, I think this goes back to, it's not so much what you say, it's how you say it. I think she mentioned, Han, what are you doing? Are you trying suicide? Your expression and the way that you say it already is negative. And so your child is going to respond to that by not responding, by closing, and by, so I think everything is balance, structure, responsibility, and all these things that you teach at home is what your child is going to learn in the streets. So street smart, number 1, is very, very important, how you deal with the world. Sad to say, my middle child is not street smart at all. My daughter's a little bit wiser, and she's younger, but wiser than he is. So even though I raised them all eating hard-boiled eggs, scrambled eggs, milk, they all have taken their own kind of road, okay, and their own path. And as much as we try to be everything for our children, we can't. And so let them be who they're going to be. They don't have to be doctors, they don't have to be scientists, they don't have to be engineers. Whatever makes them happy, and the most important thing that you should relate to them is their happiness, whatever makes them happy. However, going to school, for me, is so important, and it's not because of the money, it's the person that it makes you. Now, we can all say, if once you go to school, your mindset is completely different, and it's not so much to become a smarter, make money person. It's it shapes you. It makes you understand the world around you. I went to Loyola University in Chicago, and when I went to the school, it was a Catholic university. And I never went to church. I mean, I went to church, okay, rarely. When I went to Loyola University, it is a Catholic university, and you know, we had to take religion courses, and I thought, oh my God, they're gonna push religion down my throat. I can't. It was the two best classes I ever had. And it taught me a whole lot about people and understanding and knowing that, you know, how you say things, you know, can have lasting impressions on people. So anything, whatever you relate to your child, make sure that you have some structure at home. They have responsibilities. Who's going to do the dishes today? Who's not going to do the dishes? Get them to do their own laundry. These are things that are going to give them these life skills that are not taught in school. How to balance your book. It's not taught how to use a credit card. How do you get a credit card? What does a FICO score mean? You know, what does a credit score mean? All these things that you need, you know, to survive nowadays. Now, if FICO score, you know, gives you a better, you know, interest rate, how can somebody that I don't even know who it is can dictate, you know, what I can and cannot buy?
Sure.
These things are important things, and these things that are learned at home, they're not learned in school. And so, you know, whatever you teach your children at home, know that they're going to use that in their life skills later on. So impress upon education. It's very, very important. And like I said, it's not to make a whole lot of money, but it changes you. It helps you to relate to the world. And sometimes it's all about how you relate to the world.
Sure.
Okay,
So to an extent where my kid says, Mom, you just, 11-year-old, Mom, you just spent my college fund. You just spent my college money on that. So yeah, so they're getting educated more and more
Which
and
is
learning
really-
about savings. Yes.
Exactly, it's really important. We've gone away from that. We've gone away from economics in school, sewing classes, all these things that they may not seem important, but gosh, you know, if you're changing a tire, my children, all three of them don't know how to change a tire. And these are the skills that, you know, not that you can't call AAA, but sometimes, you know, it's not convenient. It's not. So these life skills that they learn at home, responsibility, structure, doing their laundry, doing dishes, helping in the kitchen, this is going to shape your children. And then these type of activities at home help to open up the lines of communication between your children. You know, what are your interests? Oh, do you like this? You don't like this? Why? You know, so the family is the most important step into living a healthy life and the stepping stones onto a better future.
Right.
It's what it is at home. You know,
Very
so
nice.
it
So-
starts at home.
Understood, yes. So family, balance, and a structure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The same question for
Same
me,
question
like-
for all, but if you can make it 30 seconds because we have the
If
debate
I-
next.
No, even I will
No,
not.
it was good. It was good start.
No, even I will not take that much because this question is not really for me. Like, this is wrong question because the way I brought up, it was totally different. My parents used to tell me, okay, guys, you just complete your education, get a better job, then settle down. I was guided. And I'm doing the same thing for my son. I don't know what he's going to do tomorrow. I'm just telling the same thing. That's kind of my perspective. So I think definitely this is going to be a wrong question for me. Like,
So the other question also was street smart or academic smart?
I think as far as the generation is concerned, they should be street smart.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They-
Dave,
I
go
would
ahead.
say street smart for sure, and dating age, you asked about
Dating
that?
age, yes.
Who the heck knows? There is absolutely no right answer on that question
And
at all.
that's what we want to let the people know, that there's sometimes no right answer or wrong answers. Go ahead, Guranga.
I would say street smart.
They're street smart.
Yeah, I would say more street smart than academic smart, but for dating, but for
already is dating.
yeah.
He's hiding it from mommy.
Dating, I've had like in fourth grade, I would know people that started dating. So I would just say like whenever you learn how to respect others.
Very nice. Very good question. Very good. Andy? Sorry, here.
Following up on the dating question, I won't give you an age. I won't give you an age, but I would say that it needs to be supervised. You know, I think that it's something that the parents should just be aware of and in communication with their children about. So it just shouldn't be something that happens outside the parents' knowledge and what's going on. I think everybody has to make their own rules on that. For us personally, in our family, it's 18. And so dating as is defined by society is 18 because you're an adult. We actually explain to our children that we actually believe that dating or courting, when you actually, you know, are thinking about, you know, marriage and your girlfriend, that you should be able to provide for her. And that she should also be able to provide for you. I mean, you should be thinking about it as adults. You should be making this conversation. So I say this is a very mature conversation that you should be having, you know, with this person. And if you're going to be dating somebody and you're 15 or 16 or 17, then we're going to know about it. We're going to be part of that. And so that's what I would add there. And then really quickly on the street smart and academic smart, I think that it's very important that what we teach values. And we also teach them how to learn. If you teach them how to learn and you teach them values, so they're growing tough, they're not afraid to put themselves in a difficult situation, understand how to handle people, right? And then at the same time, you teach them how to learn, well, they can learn anything they need to academically. So those would be my thoughts there.
Very nice, thank you.
Well, I agree with Andy in terms of the dating piece. It needs to be supervised. And in terms of street smart, yes, but also impress upon them the importance of getting a good education.
Amen.
Thank you.
I definitely think that, you know, academic smart, you learn in school, like that's something that you're trained when you're a student in school, you learn knowledge or whatever, but the thing that you don't learn in school is street smarts, and I think that's something that's equally as important, if not, like they said, more important. And on dating, I definitely think it's something, whenever you feel it's appropriate. And what I mean by that is there's a huge misconception in high school, you know, amongst my friends and my peers, that they think, I mean, it's a cultural norm here to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that's not the way I was brought up. And I think the reason people turn to that, my friends turn to that, is because they think that they need someone to talk to, but they don't understand that you don't need to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend to make that happen. You have friends, you have your parents, and I think it's just the romanticized version of what we see in like High School Musical, or you know, these TV shows you see growing up. We think, oh yeah, I want a high school boyfriend, but I mean that's not necessarily, you know, but they're not going for that for the reasons that they really think.
Very nice, thank you.
I'm going to be a little different. I'm going to say there needs to be a balance. But being street smart teaches resourcefulness and problem solving. And so I think of the two, it's more important. That's what's going to really teach you a lot about real life. And I'm probably the wrong person to ask about when you should date, because until I got married and met my husband, anybody I went out with had to spend one night, not overnight, but just one evening at my home with my parents there in the other room, just chatting and visiting. And so that was really uncomfortable when it was somebody who just maybe wanted to go out with you one time, and that was it. That was not a good thing. So, but I think back now, and I think that was probably a good thing, because it taught me to respect the other person, and I gave them the message that I needed to be respected too, so.
Very nice. So I would like to thank the panelists for their time today. And please don't leave, because we have the debate going on. It's a different type of debate, which is going to be interactive, but we also have some mementos to hand out to you before you leave. And of course, the attendees have some questions for you at a later stage after the debate. But one question for you all is, if you had 3 apples and you took away 2, if you took 2, how many do you have? 2. I knew she would win it. 2, yes, because you took 2, right? So we'll just move to the front seat, and then I'll have this, because last time when we had our panel discussion, we sort of did a real drama where we had real conversations about what happens in a house between parents and kids and husbands and wives in communication, and people really liked it. So we wanted to, more than a panel discussion of advising and recommendation, I wanted us to really ask these questions to you guys on how your mom and dad would ask you and how would you respond, or between your peer friends. So let's start. It's not a big, you don't have to go deep into things. Sometimes it can be just a yes answer or a no answer, right? And initially you can just mention your name and your affiliation as well. So is it a text or a phone call?
Is it a text or a phone?
Hold on, let me give you this, yes. Would you prefer, so if you can talk on the thing.
yeah.
Would you prefer a text or a phone call, or what would you do?
I would prefer phone call.
Phone call?
Phone call.
Awesome, okay, tell us why.
I prefer phone call because it's much more personal and shows that you actually care about individuals. When you just send a text message, it can take 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It could be something that now, you know, it's programmed into it automatically, you know, like you don't have to say I love you, you can send I, and then it's going to like put in the rest, you know. So I think that a phone call is much more personal, and taking a phone call is saying you want to hear that person's voice. There is something unique about a person's voice, and knowing that there's a connection there that can't be broken. And that's kind of, I think that that's the pro of having phones, technology, is that you can actually speak to someone without being there, something like FaceTime or just a phone call. Whereas I think the negative when it comes to these things are things like text messages, because I think that they're very impersonal. And I think that in a lot of ways, that is conveyed, even though it's not said, it's conveyed to every generation, whether it's the older or the younger. Everyone loves having a call from the grandparents, or if your mother calls you during the day, it just shows, you know, I'm taking a step back and I'm calling you, ask how it's going, you know.
So Chandra, and you're from Grayson High School.
I'm from Collins Hill High School.
Console.
Collins Hill High School.
Collinsville. Okay, thank you so much for being here. Shreya, text or a phone call?
I would definitely say phone call, because I think from my personal experiences, there's a lot of miscommunication over text. I mean, you have emojis nowadays to convey your emotions, but that doesn't really work. I think definitely when you talk to someone, you really know how they feel. And sometimes when I text my friends, I take the approach where I'm trying to say something sarcastically and they take it negatively, and then they're mad at me the next day. I'm like, no, that's not at all what I meant. I'm trying to be funny. And so I think definitely phone call over text for sure.
Really? Okay, Sophia?
Well, I have struggled a lot with an anxiety disorder, so phone calls are actually really hard for me because I can't see the person, so I can't pick up on what emotion they're feeling based on what I'm saying or how they're responding. So I prefer text messaging just because it's easier and it's a lot faster. If I have to make a phone call, I will. But as far as communicating with my friends, I always text them. I don't think any of us like to call each other.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. Kim, text or phone call?
If it's, a quick question or I'm running late or something like that, I'll send a text or receive a text from somebody. But, my son is away at college and he will text me, we'll text back and forth, but I love talking to him on the phone when I call him and he picks up and tells me about his day, or he calls me to ask me a question. There is nothing like having a phone call with my son. So I prefer phone calls, but I use a lot of text messages for quick things.
Okay, I guess being in this forum, I'm becoming a teenager because I don't know if I'll ever say phone call. It's all about text. Maybe I'll change one day, but Gurangat, go ahead.
I'd prefer phone call. As like the first one, as like the first few reasons, because it's more meaningful. And second, I kind of like using the phone for what it's for. And also, text messages are brief, quick. If you want to get the message out, then yeah, go ahead. But I think phone call, I think it's just an easier way of understanding. And I call my friends a lot. Like, my mom knows this, but I stay up late talking to my friends too much. And yeah.
Very nice. Remco?
I think for me it depends on the occasion and who it is. I like having the option because sometimes it's better to talk on the phone. Sometimes it's better to text back and forth. And so it's a variety of the two. I agree with everything that's been said, that sometimes you can confuse matters with a text. I actually still prefer face-to-face more than anything, but it's great having the option.
Hello. We have to see our affiliation too? Or
Text or
text, okay.
or phone call?
For me, text first, phone call second, in the sense that phone call is much more intimate or direct or personal. So these days, when somebody wants to contact me, I ask them in text, what do you want to talk about? And then if it is something of importance, then I say, okay, call me or I'll call you. And then there's a couple more layers. You mentioned some, but Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp is kind of even before text, because you don't have to reveal your actual phone numbers, so you can block people very easily. And servers like Skype or Discord, or I don't know if you have any familiarity with those, but I'm starting to use them a lot. And my teenage son, who is in the car not wanting to come here today, is an addict of Discord servers.
Very nice, awesome. So and this is a great learning lesson for me, because the reason I put this question is I said all the adults are going to say phone call or the teenagers are going to say text. And you saw the exactly opposite answers that I got here. So a great learning lesson for me. Chandra, if you had to inherit a trait from each of your parents, from your mom and dad separately, what would those traits be? And if you can just make it, I want us to go. Yes.
I think from my father, he just recently passed away, but I think what I hope to have gathered from his living on earth and kind of raising me is his servant leadership. He was a real server of our entire family, and I hope to carry that trait onto my family. And for my mother, she's a very strong, dedicated woman, and I hope to be that goal-oriented towards my family, one, and then obviously in my future, my career, my friends, and all that. So.
I definitely think for my mother, she's very dedicated and hardworking. She's a very hard worker. She's gone a long way to get to where she is today. So I definitely think I hope to inherit her end goal in mind perspective. And for my dad, he's always very calm and positive, and he creates an environment where you always feel comfortable. And I think I always want to make sure I stay positive and optimistic like he is.
Very nice. Sophia?
My mom is very people-oriented. I think I've already inherited a lot of that from her, but I really love how she's able to turn just about any situation into a conversation with someone, and she just really loves working with people, which is something I also enjoy doing. And for my dad, this isn't awkward at all. That's my dad. My dad's always been very decisive, and he's always able to be very firm in his decisions, and I really look up to that because I tend to be kind of indecisive, so I hope I can grow into that kind of person as well.
Very nice. Kim, I'm changing the question for you. If you had to choose one family member to be around for 24/7 for a week, who would that be?
I really love my family.
So the question is, if you had to choose one family member to be around 24/7 for a week, who would that be?
I would first say my father. He's since passed away, but he was this just amazing, bigger-than-life person who also did these things behind the scenes that no one ever heard about. At his funeral, people flew in from all over the country, and my family and I had no idea that he had put all of these relatives from around the world and people we never heard of through college, because he so believed in education. But we never knew. And so I'd love to spend a week with him and just learn these things that I learned after he passed away. This wonderful generosity of spirit. But I love all of my family, and if anybody sees this, I would definitely pick you second. And absolutely my beautiful son, who is amazing, and kind of this great combination of me and his dad and a little bit of his grandfather. And he's funny and smart and generous and just wonderful.
Very nice. Gurungat?
This is the family?
It has to be a family member.
Okay.
We're on the mic.
Well, mom and dad, no. My brother.
He's being frank.
My brother, no. Let's see. I'd probably choose my mom's youngest sister's family. The youngest child, because I've never seen them. So.
Very nice.
outside my own family, I don't have that kind of family. So within my own family circle, I would say probably, not even probably, definitely my wife.
Wow, very nice.
Being single, I don't have that option, but it's still thinking about it. I have two amazing sons, and since this is going to be recorded, I'm not going to pick one because in case he gets watched, I already get questioned a lot about, you like him better than me.
Yes,
So,
we all do, yes.
but I would say, I would pick my kids, even though they're young teenagers, 12 and 14, they're boys, and their personality is becoming very affirmative. So it's not always easy.
Yes. So Chandra,
I was just going to say, Nazira, who would you pick?
it is a tough question, isn't it? And it is getting watched, and my daughters are watching. So Neetu wants me to say it's Neetu. Definitely, yes. So Chandra, if you won $1 million, what would you do? And I wanted this to be quick.
Okay. If I won $1 million, I would use all of it on other people. All of it.
You would use all of it on the other people?
Every single dollar, because I didn't earn it.
Any specific particular cause?
No. I would separate it into a bunch of different causes. Hopefully, if you build, I don't know, if building a company or helping nonprofits, or what I would like to use it for is something that can help sustain other people. I think a lot of times you give, and it's something that only helps instantly, but I'd like something that continues in a legacy that can help sustain in the future, not just in the now.
Okay, Shreya?
Chandra stole my answer, but I think if I were to choose one thing to put all that money into, I'm really passionate about women's education. I started a club at my school. It's a chapter of the national organization Let Girls Learn that was founded by Michelle Obama. Basically, there's so many girls around the world who are, denied their basic rights to education. I think that's something that's been really strong in my family too, on my mom's side, and it's really hard to come by education, especially when you're not in America or in a developed country. So definitely for an organization that would contribute towards that.
Very nice. Sophia?
Well, I just graduated from college, so I would pay off all my student debt first, and then see
The
how much is
reality
left
strikes.
over. Yeah, no, you're gonna change that answer after you go to college. Gonna pay off the debt first, and then we'll figure out how much is left.
Very nice. The reality strikes, right? So Kim, should parents buy kids a car and pay up their gas, or should it be the kids themselves buy their own car?
Well, I think it should be a combination of both, because a car that my son could afford probably wouldn't be a very safe car. And so I want him to have a safe car, but I also want him to help contribute towards that, and for gasoline and for insurance. And so I would say it's both.
Okay, good. Should your parents pay for your car?
Well, from the stories I've heard, I'll say no. Because my 7th grade literature teacher, she said that she bought her own car and she's never gotten in an accident. Because, that's using your own money, and you're going to be more wary of it, and your parents will also notice it too, that you're being responsible for something. But for gas, yeah, they should probably pay it.
See, it's good that you have your parents listening to you now. Remco?
I think I would agree with Kim that it's a combination, that cars are expensive, and we live in a very car-dependent society. So especially when a child goes to college, they have to have a car, but they can't afford one. And so we, as parents, we definitely have to help. It's not a sink or swim kind of thing, but at the same time, you want to teach your child responsibility, because it's part of the street smarts we talked about, of which I like to call life smart, and in understanding that you got to take care of the thing and what goes into that.
Just to vary a little bit the answers, I believe that Uber and Lyft and taxi companies can actually achieve a lot. So we actually don't need cars as much as we, older adults, depend on them. And I have younger attorney friends who could totally afford a car, who actually completely live with Uber. Now they live in the city like I do. I think if I lived in the suburbs, it could be different. But I've told my kids already that a car won't come very quickly. I come from a country where you learn to drive at 18, and I think my kids will have to wait at least 18.
Okay, very nice. Chandra, should students friend teachers on Facebook?
Could you repeat the question?
Can students friend teachers on Facebook?
I think the policy right now is that you can befriend teachers after you graduate from high school, when you're not, in that relationship still. And I agree with that because I think that there's a personal level that teachers have. They have their personal life, and when they come to work, I think that attests to some. Earlier during the panel, we talked about respecting teachers, respecting elders, respecting those who have come before you. And I think that when you see their personal life, I think that that's one. There's a lot of bullying that's going to be involved in that. Okay, even towards the older generation, and you see that even after people graduate from high school, going back to teachers' profiles and things like that. And I think that that's kind of a personal thing for the teachers to. I don't think that belongs kind of in the educational system, if you will.
So Shreya, different question for you. If you could do one thing in the world to change or to make it improve, what would that be? No pressure.
One thing to improve the world. I don't know. I mean, there's so many things you can do to improve the world. I don't know where to start. I mean, of course, the one thing I just mentioned the last time I spoke was the one thing I'm passionate the most about is about girls' education. But I think the root of it I think the root of the issues in society is miscommunication. That's the main thing. So I guess improving this communication would be a start.
Very nice. Sophia, what is one thing that you wish now that your parents had said to you while you were growing up?
How do you do taxes?
That's a good one.
No, I'm not sure.
We'll sit down with you.
You already have. I don't know, because I mean, I'm not sure if there's much I would change about or wish we had talked about as a kid, because I'm kind of so far past that at this point that I'm kind of like, it is what it is. So I'm not really sure. I don't really have a good answer for that.
Okay, thanks, but that was a good one. So, Kim, what is the most important thing that a mother can give her children?
Wow.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
It's a debate, right?
Gosh, there are a lot of things that a mother or any parent gives their child. Love, just always knowing they can always come to me. He can always come to me no matter what. I will always love him no matter what.
Very nice. Gurangad, what's the most important thing that a father can give to his children?
Attention.
He's getting all the attention. Same question.
Same
The
question.
father, yes.
Okay. Yeah, how do I follow that? That's definitely true, because as a father, you can become very easily distracted, and you can hide behind work and things like that. So attention is extremely important. One of the most important things that I think I have passed on to our kids is dependability. More so than academic achievement or success, be a dependable person, because people will trust you when you are.
So for me, it would also be love, but I want to characterize it a little more precisely, because I think we sometimes confuse different types of love. And the kind of love that I want to give to my kids is acceptance, and a sense of, I trust you, I believe in you, and you can go wherever you want. Rather than the kind of love where, be careful, you could jump, or you could fall. So a very accepting love.
Very nice. So one question for the audience is, which weighs more, a pound of bricks or a pound of feather?
You don't know how much.
Who said both? Neetu, come on. Neetu, here. We give you a gift since you already received money, but you have to give it to someone else. Yes. Okay, good. Oh. So let's give one sentence, your final thoughts on what you heard so far from the panel. and one takeaway message that you want to give the audience, and then right after each of our messages, one sentence, the profound message that you want us to take while leaving the door today, after listening to everything the adults and the teenagers had to say. And then after that, we'll have the panelists come back, so the audience will open the question and answer session. Go ahead, Chandra.
I think in terms of relationships between parents, teenagers, teachers, whether you want to talk about the older generation or the newer upcoming generation, is lead by example. I think that when you have teenagers that look at you and you are not leading by example, they are less likely to listen to you at the word go. You can give them advice, but when you're not living out that advice, you're not showing them the success of your advice, and you're also not showing them that they can trust you, and that you are not showing that you can live by your own words. So I think before even listening and all that, I think know what you stand for, know your values, live by them, and teach your kids accordingly to whatever that is.
Very nice. So a woman gives, one more quiz, a woman gives an astronaut $1, right? So this woman is giving this astronaut $1. The woman is the astronaut's sister, but the astronaut is not the woman's brother. Why? Sister. Yeah, because she's the sister. Who said it? The astronaut is the sister?
The astronaut's the girl!
Yeah, somebody already answered. Oh, it was Sarjan. Okay, so Rajanji, you'll give Sarjan, and Neetu will hand the gift again. So, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm very thankful to have been given this opportunity, because I've learned so much just from sitting here, and I've gotten to learn from all these different perspectives of everybody in different fields. And I'm really thankful for that, so I would like to thank you. And also, I think one thing that we should all take away is that it's really important to understand who you're dealing with. So understanding the person who's sitting in front of you, and that's the base of it. So I think taking that away, definitely.
Very nice, thank you.
I'd say the biggest thing to kind of keep in mind is if you don't trust your children, they will not trust you. And just opening that trust and understanding them to be dependable people and teaching them to be dependable, like my dad said. If you trust them to make wise decisions and to come with you when they have issues, then they will trust you enough to actually come to you and talk about it. And it really helps open up communication if you treat your children like a trustworthy person.
That's an intense and very true message, Sophia, so thank you. Kim?
I learned a lot of great things from the panel today, especially about communicating and asking questions that aren't full of fear or think your child is, that you're fearful, but asking questions that kind of lead them to identify what the consequences are and to maybe open up more. And so for me, that message from the panel about communicating and also about pursuing your child and not being an interrogator, but being interested in their life and, asking questions instead of waiting for them to come to you. I just learned so many great things about communicating.
Good.
Can you repeat the question?
What is the one takeaway message that people should have got from our today's discussion from the beginning?
Well, I'll say like this from what I got, but I think it's both the parents and the teenager or child have to change as the child grows, because the same thing doesn't work every time.
The world has changed very drastically from the time that we were children ourselves and this time that we are parenting. And so for a lot of us, that provides a conundrum in the sense that we don't have a frame of reference or an incomplete frame of reference to take into our parenting, which is, one of the reasons why we call ourselves digital immigrants, whereas our children are digital natives. And it puts us a couple of, steps behind the world in which we live. And so it is very, very important for us as parents that we inform ourselves, informed parenting. Don't give in to fear of what you do not know. Listen to your kids, give them attention, get to know their world, do research. That same digital world that is such a mystery to us provides us lots of information about itself. Avail yourself of that to get to know their world and find ways to interact and to coach your kids into a world that is very, very complicated, way more complicated than the world was when we grew up. And that probably dates me, but that's kind of what I'm hearing.
So if I were to pick one of the many things I've heard today that I thought was very interesting, you have to know first that I'm very interested in the process of mentorship. And there was a discussion at one point with a lady who is interested in suicide prevention and the man who followed up. But the importance to have an adult that is in relationship with your children that they can confide in. And the reason that was given I thought was wonderful, this idea that as parents we process fear differently than another adult will do. Therefore, we don't want to hear about the risky behavior of our kids like another adult can. So I'm all for developing mentoring networks. I think we need this desperately in a world where we don't have a lot of uncles and aunts and cousins living nearby. And that was a really great validation for this perspective that I have.
So, so what we are all basically trying to say is whether teenagers or adults, we owe the understanding, the listening capabilities, skills, and empathize, and learn and understand from each other. We just owe that to each other as teens and adults, irrespective of the age differences, and to put each other in others' shoes. Is that sort of summarize the empathizing part comes in? So I would request, thank you so much again for all of you to be on the debate. I know I try to make it as less cumbersome as it can be with just quick answers. So the panelists, if you can come back forward, so in case the audience has some questions, I will allow for 4 questions for the panelists, and then we'll have the gift exchange or gift giving.
Excuse me 1 second. Let's take a walk. All right. One more, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So panelists, why don't you come back forward? And thank you, Chandra and Sophia. Thank you. And Remco and Fred. Yes. We might need one more chair.
You both are leading
You got the
us.
easiest job. Just sit and be pretty.
We might need, let's do one chair, if you don't mind. Oh, okay, sure, no problem, yeah. So I know one of our panelists had to leave, but Kate, we can adjust answers from her. Go ahead. Anilji, and then Neetu, and then Ranjit, and then KG.
So before I forget my question, I thought I'd raise my hand. Grand question, since some of us were ignored totally. What role, if any, I know there is, can grandparents play in the lives of their children and grandchildren? And I say that grand, G-R-A-N-D, because they are grand.
Very, very nice, and very nice. Thank you, thank you. Very important part in our lives.
Well, I think it takes a village, so they're part of the village, and I think that it's very important. The values are so different than our values are today, and however, they can always teach us a lot about, stability, about relationships, and just because they're older doesn't mean they don't bring something to the plate, so they do, and I think they're really important. They are an extension of the whole family, so really important. Yes.
If I can clarify, what positive role can they play? Because there is such a disconnect. There's a generation gap of 2. And they have to educate themselves. They have to learn the lingo, so to speak. I come from the generation where if I tap on the keyboard, I'm afraid I might break the computer.
So you're looking at the perspective from the children's perspective to the grandparents? Or the grandparents' perspective of the children?
Both for children and grandchildren.
But if they were raised with their grandparents, there's no question about the value that they bring to each other. So if they were brought up with each other, like my son was raised, helped me raise my son, they have a bond because they were, and so what he learned from my mom is that if I had to spend time with one of my children, it would be my oldest son. He likes cooking. That came directly from my mother. She was a great cook. So there's something that always can be, learned and taken with you later on as a life skill maybe. But I think that in that relationship, they both learn from each other. I mean, she had the opportunity to, you know, raise him till he was about 5. He had the opportunity to learn things in the kitchen. He's a great cook, and he likes that. That didn't really come from me. I was always out working or whatever, but it did come from my mother. So there was a value, and it was something that they both learned together, you know, and then made them both greater people. So
Very nice.
they were able to appreciate each other. Maybe
Anyone
not
else?
then, but now
I'd like
they
to
do.
add to that.
Yes.
Sure.
I would say 2 things. One, I would say treat the millennial, right, or treat the, you know, that's the age now, that's teenagers, 20s and 30s. Treat that age, that's 2 generations, you know, 2 generations down, right? Treat them like they're the most interesting, important person in the universe. I think that we just, as the older we get, we tend to think that we're the most important thing in the universe, right? And they should be listening to us. We're the wise ones. The older we get, the wiser we are. They should be sitting at our feet and learning, right? We should be the ones talking all the time. If we treat them as though they're interesting and important and truly believe that, it's like Dale Carnegie taught us to be genuinely interested in people, we would actually apply that to the younger generation. They would respond by feeling respected, and they'd feel important, and they would want to share, and they would feel like you're one of their best friends. You know, they would really feel that way. And then I say the second thing is, it's actually the way that you treat your child, right? Right? So they have children, and you want to impact and be part of their life. The way that you respect and love their parents has a lot to do with the way they perceive you. So those 2 things, I think, can make a massive impact in building a stronger relationship and relating to that 2 generations down, your grandchildren.
Very nice. I think Neetu and then Ranjit.
I need the person to stand and use this microphone to ask the question. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Neetu, and I have a teenager kid. My question is, I don't know if there's an answer for it, but if a kid is very academic focused, and we are talking about, you know, being a street smart. So how do I train a person? See, I've given, I mean, as a parent, I mean, most of us, we give value to a kid, a teenager. Being an Indian parent, it is more important than anything else. We give them academic, I mean, we send them to good school, and of course we tutor them at home. But how to make them street smart? Because that's important.
It's such an excellent question. It really, really
Thank you.
is.
I'm always-
And I think that they have something to say. However, it's a great question. Honestly, it's a really good question. But I think that if you take the opportunities in life to teach them.
Go ahead.
You
Correct.
teach them opportunities outside the home. So maybe volunteering, you know, seeing what the world is really like, seeing, you know, why you would want to maybe feed the homeless at soup kitchens, and expose them to the outside world, you know, that would help them, you know, become, you know, better human beings later on, but also to see that, you know, not everybody lives the way that, you know, maybe you live, you know, that there are people outside that are maybe less fortunate. And, you know, everybody here was talking about what they do $1 million. Everybody in their heart would like to do something for someone else. So I think that teaching them those
See,
you know,
values, yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry to
So
cut
Neetu,
you
I
off.
would like you to hear from Guranga, Shreya,
Sure.
and then we'll follow up with the
Yeah, please.
comments.
Okay, well, street smart, where I got it from was from my friends, because school you're already gonna get. That's what your parents can assure you. Your parents can't assure you that you'll know the knowledge of, suppose like what the kids know, because I'll use my example, because I came from India, and I had to make some friends. I was assured a school, but I didn't know what was the common thing that was going around. I didn't know what was the norm. So it's mainly street smart comes from your friends and your peers. I don't think it can come from adults, but I think it's more of your peers and
Maybe,
your
yeah.
people your age group.
Very nice. Shreya?
Oh, sorry.
I think the younger generation is
They
eager
have
to say the
answers.
answer because you generally
Right.
have the answers, yes.
My family is originally from Nepal, and I was raised with a typical brown household, you know, that, you know, it's purely academics. You only focus on schools. Your priority is always school. Everything else, friends, extracurriculars, always comes after that. And I think, yes, definitely, academics is number one. And I think we all, as kids, we know that. But it's also equally as important to be with your friends and be outside of your you know, focus of education, because that's where you learn the most. I learned the most, like he said, from our peers, from my friends, and from TV, from modern, like anything you would watch on Netflix. I learn so many things from shows that I watch, and I think it's just, I mean, yes, definitely have an emphasis on education, but also making sure that you make sure your child has time for other things as well, because that's what's really going to help them, survive in the real world.
Very nice. Thank you. Ranjit?
Yes.
Did that answer your question? Yes.
I think she has to be more exposed to
Yes.
everything. But the school studies are so pressurized. They have so many activities. I
Sure.
never allow her to watch movies.
Sure.
So maybe.
You are yourself admitting that
Yeah,
not
maybe
giving an
that's what I said.
opportunity to socialize
Exactly.
your child. That is very important. See, she was, I don't want to say that, see, we are giving more importance to the community. You have to balance it.
Right.
If you cannot balance it, you are doing justification. You're not doing justification for the child.
Especially
So you have to
being
balance
raised in
it.
this
Definitely
country.
you have to
Yes.
balance it. Sir, as far as the question you were asking, sir, you are the role model of your grandchildren. You are the role model of your grandchildren. You are the one guiding them, not his parents. Because they are very busy with their schedule nowadays. The parents are not spending much time with. Being a grandparent, you are the one going to take care of them. So you are definitely going to be the role model for them. That's what I personally feel like.
Yes.
Because most of the time we discuss the same thing at home.
Very nice. Good. So now you feel you're not being ignored. Yes, high expectations. Ranjit?
Hi. See, I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, right? So we've just gone through the first phase of learning to be parents of teenagers. But one thing I'm dealing with right now is being a parent of a driver. And it puts a lot of pressure on the family that first, there are 3 drivers and 2 cars, so that itself is a big problem. And the second is I deal with him driving and my wife deals with him driving completely differently. So I'm more like, he knows what he's doing, he should be fine, and she's the one who will probably follow him in the second car. So what is the right way to do it? And I'm really happy that there's a panel of teenagers, parents, and professionals like a sergeant who can probably help us decipher this.
Honestly, I think it would be them who would probably have a better answer than I would. I can tell you the law, what the law says. However, I think that the way that you honestly handle it yourself and your child is going to learn and take from it a little bit of what you do and a little bit of what she does. They'll be a little bit more cautious because she's like, oh my God, be careful there. And you're more like, whatever, just drive. Because normally it is just drive, and that's where they get their experience. So I think that your child's going to get a little bit from both, which is okay.
I would like to have a trainer rather than the parents.
Dr. Tofia, I'm sure you have an answer for this one.
Well, I was just thinking, take them to Tiny Town.
Some bonus tickets.
Exactly, so they make sure that they know the rules of the road, and hey, you got to trust them. Just trust them.
I'll replay that to my wife.
Yeah. And
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. So Ranjit, this is being recorded, so definitely we can show Sridevi. Who had the next question? Go ahead, KG. Hold on, you have to stand up and use the mic.
So can I have the?
Yeah, you can face.
Am I authorized to ask?
Face this side.
She's my
Yes.
wife. So
I got you, sir.
thank you. So we were talking about the child's growth, especially between 12 to 24 or whatever it is, right? And the life is full of surprises, especially when the kids are growing. And the surprises can be a tiny to the biggest one, from the drugs to the suicide. Do we have any forums or do we have any opportunities for the parents to prepare for that? Myself and my wife went to a course called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is nothing but if you talk to a person for, say, 2 hours, or live with a person for 24 hours, you will be able to align yourself to the mood or the emotion or the behavioral pattern of the opposite person, which makes you to think alike, which makes you to communicate alike. and they become your friend. They will be trusting you. They will be, believing you. They will be seeing you as a guide. I don't think everybody will get that opportunity. I don't know whether that is going to help me or not when I'm going to go, face all this problem with my kid. Can you just enlighten on those areas?
So the question is, are there any forums which prepares the parents to deal with kids and challenges from the smallest to the biggest, so they start to think alike?
Not to my knowledge, but one of the things that you can do, you can always Google, okay? There's a number of organizations that actually address that. As a matter of fact, I can get with you afterwards. I wrote down some sites that you could actually go to, and most of these organizations are like nationwide. You can also contact your local mental health center and see if they have anything available. United Way, you can get some resources from that as well.
Go ahead here.
One thing, this is a great answer, and I think one thing to add to that is there's a lot of great podcasts that are out there now where you can find some top podcasts on those topics, and you're getting experts talking about this in a debate situation. They're like a radio show type situation, and it's free content. It's a great way to find some of those answers.
So is it also possible that we hold public forums like this within your community? Your question might be your friend next door has an answer to that question. Smaller chai and chat sessions within your community, you lead it, and you learn so much from your peers, and sometimes we're just stuck within our homes from our job and going back and taking care of responsibilities. We forget to interact with the person next to us.
So the problem is when the parents encounter these surprises,
right,
they realize.
Yeah, definitely. And so for that,
Till that time, everything is like
everything is normal.
Normal, right?
Yes.
That's
and
a
this
challenge.
is one of the reason I'm starting to hold this. And if you saw, the next session is on aging, healthy aging. We are all sitting here, we are healthy. We don't know what's going to happen to us at 65. Who's going to take care of us? All those insurances that they're talking about, all the information and health issues. So this is sort of, I'm trying to say, let's be prepared. Let's prevent. So this is the reason we're doing these sessions, but definitely. Trishna, Dr. Trishna, go ahead.
I just want to add one to that.
Can you hold on to the mic?
I just want to add only one sentence like that. In most of the schools, we have the counselors. They will be looking at the child, how he is growing, how he is responding to the instructions, Basing on that, they will be contacting the parents and talking to them. As far as my knowledge, most of the schools have counselors over there.
Sure. Go ahead, Dr.
So
Trishna.
Nazira, that was an absolutely brilliant engagement. I just want to add to this gentleman's answer and what you said about holding the smaller chai events. So what I have found in the last maybe 4 years that I've been here in the United States is I have always engaged in my local community. So I have like a group of Indian women, I have a group of American women, I have a group of like mixed women, I have a group of people who are over 70 who I go hiking with once a week. So in terms of, you said you don't know the problem till you actually face it, but when you're all together having a cup of coffee and you just talk about, so what did you do? How did you do this? What's your child doing? And I would say, oh, well, my son's there. I don't know when he'll come here. Somebody would say, oh, my child's getting into drugs. He's kind of, I don't know what to do with that. Somebody else will have an older child in the 30s. And then I have the 70, 80-year-olds who will talk about their grandchildren and say, oh, I have to go cheerleading practice. And they say, I'm a funny grandmother. And, so you pick up so much information from, it's like a pot of wisdom. And I just enjoy those events because not only can I contribute to it, but I come away learning so much. And then I transfer it to my husband, to my children, and I say, okay, I heard this happened to my friend's daughter. Now, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And the other thing I would like to say is that appreciating your child. I mean, there is nothing in the world that a child loves more than the parents say, oh, I loved the way you made, the flaked rice today. Or I loved the way you made the chai today. You know, his daughter is learning kind of Indian things. So I think that's also very important.
Awesome.
The problem is how many people will be disclosing the parts. You know? When
Yes.
I want to talk to you, I will talk only the positive things.
Oh, absolutely.
I will
And
not be discussing what my child is doing at home.
yes,
That is the main
that
The trust
comes.
is missing. The trust is
But
not there.
that comes as you develop a relationship in the community. So if you go to your community once in 6 months, they probably won't say things to you. But if you make an effort to meet regularly, you know, like I have a lot of other commitments, but I always go to my hikers group because for me, they're like my grandparents, and I just love interacting with them. And they disclose to me how, you know, their lives are, what problems they are having, and that then I can identify, okay, my parents will get at that stage, and that prepares me to deal with my parents reaching that stage. And then I have my local, and it's a very cultural learning as well, because
Sure.
from an Indian point of view, I would do something totally different from what an American would do, or what an African American would do, or what a Hispanic would do. And I can then, you know, teach my kids to respect diversity, to integrate, and also, you know, when you yourself tend to be open, I find people tend to be open to you.
Yes, they
So
start
if
opening
you
up.
project a sense of genuine interest, integration, and, you know, want to be deeply involved, it comes back to you.
Very nice.
I completely agree with you. There is no second thought about it. I get the chances of the kids getting to the other side is more in the world. I get to know all about these things from various sources. It could be chatting, it could be news, it could be internet, it could be anything else. But when it comes to me, how correctly I should respond? That is my question. She was telling, right, you know, when the kid comes to me and say that, I want to try this, instead of saying, oh no, don't try that, she reacted saying that, okay, go to here, see the complications, see the, effect of it.
Right.
And then decide.
Sure.
So that maturity, how a parent will get when he encounters.
Yes, and it's very situational. A parent who's experienced any untoward events or the biggest events might become advocates for such situations, and those are called support groups. So there are several support groups for abusive kids who've been raised in an abusive situation or are in an addiction disorder group. So definitely, and can you share some of the organizations with KG?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's absolutely right. Depending on what your issue is, most likely you'll be able to find a mutual support group. And I think that that's what you're asking for, somebody who has a sense of what you're going through,
Understanding.
or what you're experiencing, okay? In a mutual support group, like the doctor was saying, it's like initially you're just meeting, and when you get comfortable, you can start opening up. But you want to make sure that you utilize that opportunity to open up, because what you'll find out in a mutual support group is that most likely there's somebody in that group who has a situation that's much worse off than yours, and you can communicate. So, again, whether it be your local physician, or maybe a children's center, or your mental health center, or again, the United Way, you can contact them and they can kind of lead you in the right way. But
Very
Google
nice.
works as well.
Very nice, thank you. So time's up. I would like for those parents who've come with their kids to give the thank you mementos to the panelists who spent their time here this evening and educating all of us. So first of all, thank you to the panelists. So thank you so much for coming.